What's going on, guys? So, this lawnmower is killing me. Every time I try to do a video, there's somebody outside my window starting a heavy piece of machinery. So I'm gonna go through this really quick, then we're gonna go for a walk with the real information. So what I'm gonna talk about today is protein absorption. And this is a really important subject because everybody wants to know how many grams of protein you need to eat per day to build muscle. Everybody wants to know what the optimal amount of protein is. But what few people understand is that it's not just the amount of protein you're eating, it's gonna be how you use it, how you use that protein. So let's walk and talk, and we'll get into how you can get more out of the protein you do manage to eat. And he's outside on that lawnmower checking his cell phone right now. Just sitting there. Cool, let's walk. So, number one thing you got to remember, if you want to get more out of the protein you're eating, come on, Piper. If you want to get more out of the protein you're eating, you got to chew your food. You got to chew. You got to chew until that food's mush, until it's liquid, until it is a sludge that's easily going to go down your throat and easily become digested. And here's why. So when you don't chew, right? Well, when you do chew, when you keep chewing, the more you chew, the more you release enzymes that help to break protein down. They also help to break sugars down and carbohydrates down, right? Those enzymes are in your saliva, right? And so the more you chew, the more you're releasing, I'm going through the jungle here, more you're releasing saliva. And that helps to break things down. And it's important that you do that because when the food gets into your stomach, the stomach isn't responsible for much nutrient absorption, but what it is responsible for is producing acid that's going to help to break that food down, right? But that acid can only do so much. So if it's got limited exposure to the enzymes in your saliva, and then you put it in your stomach, the acid is going to do an okay job of breaking it down, but it's not going to do the best job of breaking it down. And what you don't want to happen is for that food to go partially digested through your duodenum and into your small intestine, because once it gets into the small intestine, that's where the real nutrient absorption occurs, and there's not going to be a whole lot more breakdown to occur inside there. The other thing is your small intestine is really, really sensitive, right? 97%, I think, of nutrient absorption occurs through your small intestine. But if that wall gets damaged, right, because of inflammation, because of partially digested food or anything like that, then your ability to absorb nutrients is also going to get damaged. So you're going to have a real hard time absorbing nutrients in the future. This dog. You're going to have a real hard time absorbing nutrients through your life. So you really want to make sure that doesn't get damaged. And if it does get damaged, there's a big possibility for total body chronic inflammation to set in, and that can lead to disease, that can lead to heart disease, that can lead to cancer, that could lead to decreased insulin sensitivity. So you really want to make sure you're chewing your protein. You'll get a lot more out of it, and you'll reduce your possibility of getting chronic diseases, right? You'll be a lot more healthy. The other thing is, even with your protein shakes, you want to make sure that you're drinking them slowly. You don't want to slam those things like they're beers or something like that. You want to drink them slowly. Give yourself a chance to slowly absorb that protein that's going into your system, all right? I'm gonna walk a little bit more and we'll get into the next tip. All right, so this next tip is going to logically follow from the first, and that is take care of your intestinal tract. Now, what does that mean? How do you take care of your intestinal tract? Well, number one, you need to make sure that you're getting enough probiotic foods into your diet, right? So I'm talking about fermented foods, sauerkraut, kimchi. Make sure you're drinking a little bit of kombucha every day. These fermented foods have live probiotic cultures in them, and those bacteria are your allies. Now, a lot of you think that bacteria and probiotics are hippy-dippy BS, but here's the thing. There's been studies that have demonstrated that when you consume probiotics with protein, it actually increases your leucine absorption by 20%. Now we know that leucine is the main amino acid that activates the mTOR pathway and creates muscle protein synthesis. And so you can actually get way more out of the protein that you do eat by making sure that your intestinal tract is stocked with healthy probiotics. Now, if you're going to supplement with protein with probiotics, this is a lot more controversial. Some people think that that doesn't matter at all, but if you get a good probiotic that hasn't been that's been refrigerated, that's been kept cool, that hasn't been kept in a hot box, even if you're ordering it from Amazon, it should be refrigerated for the whole way, then that could definitely be something that adds to your intestinal health. But beyond that, you want to also give those awesome bacteria something to feed on. Now that's where prebiotics come in. And so what you can do in order to keep a good population of probiotic bacteria in your gut is to get yourself some non-soluble fiber. So one thing some people like to do is to chew on a stalk of celery every single day. That gives some non-soluble fiber in order for those bacteria to feed on. It's called prebiotics, right? Seeding your gut with prebiotics. Other people like to use resistant starch, like potato starch, and that's something that I do. I take a half a tablespoon of Bob's Red Mill potato starch, stick it in some sparkling water, and I'll drink that in the morning. And that gives the gut a lot of prebiotic food for those bacteria to feed on. When they feed on it, they create a fatty acid called butyrate, and that butyrate actually also helps to heal that lining of the intestinal tract. Remember, in the last tip, we talked about how important that lining is for your nutrient absorption. 97% of the nutrients you absorb get absorbed through your small intestine. So I'm going to sit here for a little bit, and then we'll move on to the third and final tip. Man, beautiful day. Let's get on to the next tip. This involves something that a lot of people do, and that is that they pack their protein away in Tupperware containers, and they'll eat 5 to 6 meals of their protein with something like brown rice or quinoa. Now, here's the thing. There's nothing inherently wrong with brown rice or quinoa, right? We've been eating them since ancient history, right? We've been eating them for a really, really long time. But back in the day, when we used to eat these grains, what we used to do is we would soak them, we'd sprout them, we'd go through the whole process. Now today when we eat them, we're putting them into a quick rice cooker, we're maybe boiling them for a few minutes, and then we're gonna eat them, right? Now, what does that mean for us? Well, these foods contain something called phytates. Phytates are an irritating compound, and this compound likes to bind itself to minerals like zinc and magnesium. It also likes to bind itself to proteins. And when it does bind itself to these things, it makes them far less digestible. Now, if you're eating 1 serving of quinoa or 1 serving of brown rice a day, that you're probably okay, right? But if you're trying to put on muscle, that means you're probably cooking your food in bulk, and you're probably eating these things several times a day. And if you're getting a lot of these phytates into your system, that could mess with your protein absorption, but it can also mess with your digestive health. So here's my advice on this. If you're gonna eat brown rice and quinoa, then make sure you're soaking and sprouting them, right? Soaking and sprouting them. I had somebody come at me last time I did a video on brown rice and quinoa, and they were like, people have been eating these for a long time. But again, they were soaking them, they were sprouting them, they were making them digestible. So Google how to soak, how to sprout, and figure out how to do that, because soaking and sprouting is going to reduce the phytate content. It's also going to increase the release of vitamins and the absorbability of all the nutrients in those foods, and it's going to make them way more nutritious. If you don't want to go through that, then stick with white rice. White rice is far easier to digest, and it's actually pretty much the perfect carb for a lot of bodybuilders. Now, a lot of if it fits your macro people used to come at me and say, well, white rice and brown rice have the same macros. They do, but white rice doesn't have phytates in it, and white rice is going to be more digestible. Now, I got one more tip for you, and this is going to be a big one, so stay tuned. All right, guys, so we are back in the Bat Cave, And I've just given you 3 different recommendations for getting more out of your protein. Now, again, I want to emphasize that protein is a very important macronutrient. I want to emphasize the fact that you do need to get enough if you want to build muscle and you want to perform better. But we need to focus more and more on how our body is utilizing the food that we put into it, how it's utilizing the protein we put into it. Because just because you eat a lot of protein and you are getting the right kinds of protein, it doesn't necessarily mean your body's going to use that to build muscle if your digestive system is messed up. The first priority of any good nutrition program should be to fix your digestive tract. That should be the first thing you do every time you're training for a new thing. Now, I want to thank you for watching this video. I want to thank you for following Warrior Soul. If you haven't followed us on this channel or subscribed to this channel, please do so, and please hit that little bell at the button so you know when we're putting new content up. Also, I want to mention the Warrior Soul podcast here. We give a lot of really awesome tactics here on the Agoji channel, but on the Warrior Soul podcast, we're talking about everything from training to mental tactics to help you to be your best. And we're getting awesome guests, awesome experts on that show every single week. So if you're not checking out the Warrior Soul podcast, I highly suggest you check us out on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or Spotify, and pretty soon, iHeartRadio. And if you get a chance and you listen to an episode, please pay us the highest compliment you can and write us a review and share with your friends. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I'll be back at you later this week with another awesome episode. All right, guys, so there is one more thing I want to mention here, and that is I have an article coming out on Testosterone Nation tomorrow. And this article goes through how to get more out of your protein, goes through some of the things I talked about today and some other tips like not taking NSAIDs and not taking antacids. It's also got all of the scientific support for everything I talked about in this video. So if you really want to check up on me, go check out that article and all the references, and that'll be in the description box below. Talk to you guys soon.